Hi, everybody. It's T Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Oracle of the Self. This is session 25, I do believe, of our ongoing coaching / training sort of series. Last time around, we were trying to, check off a bunch of what I'm saying, core content sorts of things that I thought you guys should really know at this point. And we were working our way through the path of self-discovery. We reviewed what you would do during the green step as far as that 4 aspects of control kind of exercise. Then we get into, well, then what's causing you to not be there? If you know where you want, let's go back to the path. If you know where you want, if you know where you're at and you know where you want to go, why aren't you already there? And you guys already know it's because there is some obstacle or set of obstacles, real or imagined, that are in your way. And so we don't just want to list obstacles. Mind you, if this was a very simple walk through the path that we might be doing with a client for purely screening purposes, or we might be doing it perhaps as part of our sales effort, trying to put together whatever the scope of work might be, we might just say something as simple as what's stopping you from getting there? What's preventing you from getting there? What's been in your way? What have you had to overcome? What will you have? It's all variations on the exact same question. What stopped you from getting there? Well, when we've got the time and we have a client who we think would actually benefit from it, we'd like to do a deeper dive into analyzing the kinds of obstacles that have appeared or may appear in their way. And so to do that, we go to the 4 root causes of human struggle and failure. Each one of these root causes tends to live in a particular place along the change grid. And so as a result, we have to then decide where we want to move them. And that's what we'll get into when we start putting this back with the change grid maneuvers a bit later on. So I only want you to be looking at the words in the middle right now, the 4 uns. The 4 root causes of human struggle and failure will boil down, or will provide space for you to put all kinds of specific obstacles, but they're going to go into these 4 categories. The categories are unaware, unable, unwilling, and unsuitable. So unaware is a space for you to put those things that the person either doesn't know, that if they did know, they would perform better. Well, assuming they did something with that new knowledge, but there's either there's an unawareness of stuff they really should know. There's also a possibility that they could be unaware of the fact that whatever they think they're aware of is fundamentally wrong, insufficient, has been, reviewed and corrected and enhanced and whatever. So there's some piece of knowledge. Awareness tends to be around knowledge that's going on. So they're unaware of stuff they either do need to know, or they're unaware that what they think they know is not really the state of the thoughts on whatever that situation happens to be. So we do say that dealing with issues of awareness tend to fall under the domain of the manager. So when you think of yourself working in an organization, your manager's primary job is to keep you fully aware of what's going on. So if you're a new hire, the manager makes sure you know where you're supposed to sit, what you're supposed to do, who everyone is, how you go about doing it, when you can take vacation or not. They try to inform you of all these basic things. And then as time goes on, they're the ones who are supposed to keep you informed about changes in policies happening within the company, changes with expectations they've placed upon you, changes in perhaps something going on in the marketplace or in the legislation or with competition. And so they're trying to keep you aware of what's really going on. They also keep track of what it is that you're doing or not doing. And so they are responsible for capturing metrics and then using those metrics to make you aware of what you're doing well and areas that are in need of improvement. So pretty much, if you think about what a manager actually does, you're going to find this word awareness is going to be very prevalent among their list of duties. Keep in mind that there is no one on the planet who is completely and solely a manager. Everybody who works at every organization has a primary role that they perform, or might be the word that's on their business card. But the truth be told, they have other modes they go into or need to go into depending on the situation. But by and large, the domain of the manager focuses on issues of unawareness. And again, it's either being unaware, like I'm talking about metrics. People might think that they're doing super well based on performance standards, but the manager might very well have done some sort of an assessment that helps you become aware of the fact that what you held near and dear as truth is ready to be questioned at the very least, if not discarded altogether. Thoughts about awareness issues and the manager role of being, anybody? No, a lot of you have joined in. Welcome.
Kind of,
Good.
I kind of need more of, I need to swallow all of them.
Yeah, okay. And then you'll see how they all kind of fit and overlap and
Yeah,
serve one another. We'll talk about upgrade, downgrade, outgrade, and ingrid a bit later, but just to satisfy any curiosity, this is the change grid maneuver set that this role tends to rely on in order to deal with issues of awareness.
Okay.
So we're not going to talk about those till later on in your training, but nevertheless, that's where we are right now. Now, another reason why someone might struggle and fail in doing whatever is because they aren't able to do it. They are lacking in the skill, the technique, the approach, the methodology, whatever word you want to use that describes how someone can go about accomplishing something. So this is the nuts and bolts, how to do it, how to do it, how to do it. Issues of being unable to do it or issues of ability tend to fall into the domain of the trainer within you. So again, everybody is more than one thing. If you have a position where your business card says you're a trainer, well, this may be the vast majority of time that you are spending is being spent on these issues of ability. But that doesn't mean that as a trainer, you're not also a manager or have to serve as a leader or a counselor, depending on what's going on. You're just predominantly a trainer. And so your primary focus is dealing with people's issues of ability. Now, they might be totally unable to do something, totally lacking in the skills, the experience, whatever the core resource happens to be. So there is methodology. There are materials that are required to do that. So when it's about things like raw materials, we're starting to tip our toe into the management realm because we're saying, hey, manager, these people are going to need the following resources in order to be able to do whatever it is you want them to do. Now, whether the trainer is also managing those resources or the trainer is interfacing with that manager to get those resources, different companies do things in different ways. But when you're allowed to be the trainer, you're focusing on ability issues and probably more in the area of people's skills in doing what needs to be done, knowing what the procedures are, the techniques, the et cetera. So, again, even there's a little bit of awareness that's happening, but you get the idea. The awareness is designed to enable someone to do something. This should not be a one-time thing. Technology is always changing. There's always new products, new services, new approaches, new competitors, new opportunity, whatever it is. So we might have to continuously revisit the ability issue so that we can make sure that people who were able to do things in the prior setting have now been re-enabled to do something in the new setting. So this is about continuous improvement, any kind of on-the-job training. And most of our larger corporate clients, they refer to any of the training that's happening with a new hire as being in the domain of the training department, where once the people have received their core training, all this ongoing training that we're talking about is being conducted by the enablement team. So the enablement team does not do any basic sorts of training whatsoever. They walk into a room assuming that you are already thoroughly trained, skilled, tested, experienced, blah, 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 so they can work on taking you to that new level to enable you to do things with what you've already been taught and new and, different sorts of ways. So that's what ability is all about. Questions about unable as being a problem.
No,
Well,
that makes good sense.
Yep, good.
P is inability or unableness sometimes a choice?
If it's a choice, we have to factor in willingness.
Right.
And so, what is stopping them from exercising that ability? I mean, you could have people that are fully aware and fully able, but still they aren't following through and doing whatever it is that needs to be done. And on the surface, we might say, well, they're unwilling to do it. But we have to answer the question, why are they unwilling to do it? And that gets into the domain of the leader. A leader's job in any organization is to do, we've talked about this before in pride-based leadership. There's only a simple handful of things that are truly leadership activities. Everything else can fall into another category, be it manager, trainer, counselor. Keep in mind that even though you might be the leader, the supreme leader, you do not have the luxury of spending every moment of your day doing leadership related things. Sooner or later, you're going to get sucked in to some management duties you might have to do, counselor duties, maybe you even have some other kinds of duties that fall into these categories, but seem, what do I want to say, seem like a premium sort of product or of opportunity. Like leaders might often get pulled into policy discussions. Well, if there's a policy that's being discussed, it tends to be all about awareness and ability. We'll even talk about suitability. I mean, ideally, we should talk about willingness as well. If I'm going to have any kind of a strategic sort of a meeting, I really need to make sure that I'm visiting each of these potential root causes of struggle and failure so that I can kind of head them off at the pass, address them before they become an issue. Yeah. Chris has just shared that there's a difference between having the will and having the skill. Well, there's plenty of people, I will tell you, who have the skill but are unwilling. And there are plenty of people, think about this, that are willing but aren't able to do whatever's going on. If I've got a powerful leader who can share that vision and awaken that desire and make me feel like I matter and all that sort of things, you better believe I'm willing. But I can be a very dangerous player when I have no idea how to do whatever it is that I am now so willing to do. So this is a separate issue and it needs to be factored in as such.
So
So
T, how do we account for, I don't know why this comes to mind, but it does on the manager level in terms of this unawareness. How do we account for when the manager is unaware? Because you seem like there's a prevalence of that. Like typically you might get hired, you go to a corporation, they say fix my people, but it's typically management that needs fixing.
Right. Keep in mind that every manager has a manager of someone above them. Even CEOs report to a board. If you're the ultimate owner of the company, so it's a privately held kind of a company, I don't care how huge it is. If you're the owner and the buck stops with you, I suspect you're still being held accountable by a family, by maybe some investors that you're working with. Very, very rarely do you have anyone who is accountable to no one. But I would predict that if you are accountable to no one, well, that may very well make your path more difficult than if you had some accountability to deal with. Yeah, thoughts about that, Anja? Were you sharing something?
Ultimately, customers,
Oh,
everybody.
boy, there you go. Could be
Everybody-
customers, could be
Yeah.
vendors, there's other people that are going to hold you accountable. So yeah, you've got all the power to do whatever it is you feel like doing. So by
you
all
pick
means,
it
make
up.
giant mistakes because that creates opportunity for many of us that are on the call right now.
Yeah, but it just seems like there's a prevalence of that. Like when I think about stress, burnout, these things that continue, that's a lack of awareness in terms of how environment impacts one's work work health. And it just seems like they don't understand, like organizations
Well,
don't
and
understand.
so there may very well be awareness issues that work our way up the ladder. It's very easy for someone to delegate from a place of ignorance. So they don't know how to do it, so they'll delegate it to you. You don't know how to do it, so you'll delegate it to somebody else. And so, and I keep talking about the how, that's really a trainer issue. But let's say, I'll just change my words and say, I don't know what to do. They'll pass it on to somebody else. I don't know what to do. I don't know why we're doing this. I don't know who's involved. Let's pass it down. I still don't know. I don't know who should do it, blah, blah. There's all this awareness kind of stuff that really is coming into play. But the dynamic or the scenario you've just put forth would really focus more on dealing with unawareness and inability to do something. But would we or should we be in any way surprised to find out that the person who views themselves as being unable and views themselves as being unaware, or maybe even doesn't know that they're unaware of something, so why would they have assessed whether they're able to do it? Would it surprise you to find out that they're unwilling?
Yeah, true.
So we have to talk about willingness from two different angles. By the way, as you guys saw in the chat, David requested the root causes, this little screenshot, and I sent it over to everybody. So feel free to download if you'd like this. Okay, so unwillingness has to be explored in two different angles. There are plenty of people out there who are fully aware and fully able, but are totally unwilling to do something. Now, this gets back to Chris's point. Is it will or is it skill? Because I don't want to assume that their unwillingness issue is because they haven't been trained or aren't aware. I mean, I could spend all kinds of time and energy as someone further up the organization trying to boost ability and expand awareness and blah, blah, blah. But if the underlying problem is this person is just plain unwilling to do it, then I'm missing the point. I'm wasting time and energy, and I might very well be making them even more unwilling to do it. So if willingness is a primary issue, we need to look no further than the leader to see where the remedy or on whose shoulders the remedy sits.
Would we, if we appeal to their nobler motives, might that have an impact?
Well, I mean, you certainly could, but even before you would do that, and this is going to resonate with what Brian was saying, we have to ask the question, is the reason why the people are unwilling is because the leader is unwilling to lead? I mean, how many of you work with clients or have worked with clients where it was perhaps a sole proprietorship or whatever, and you suggested all sorts of things that they could do to boost, a willingness, engagement, someone feeling connected to the work and all that, and they just went like, I'm not going to do that. I got other stuff to do. What do you mean I need to show up 5 days a week? I'm the CEO. I own this place. Okie dokie.
I'm really, I find that thought about burnout really compelling on all of these levels. Just burnout, and people become, I mean, you can be unaware of your own burnout, right? And that makes people unwilling and unsuitable.
Right, and you're totally unable to deal with it yourself.
Right.
Obviously, it's going to start at awareness. You're correct. A lot of people don't realize they're burned out.
Yeah.
Someone comes along and says to them, you're burned out, in whatever form that takes, but it's brought to their attention by somebody. Let's hope it's not a doctor. Talking to you about blood pressure and whatever else might come as a result of truly being burned out. So you're fully aware about the job requirements and fully able to do whatever the job is, but you've just been buried under such a mountain of awareness and exercising your ability to do things that you're just plain burned out. Might I see you being unwilling? Yes. But that willingness is not a primary willingness issue. I suppose I could build a case on the change grid for why that would be. In fact, we'll go do that in just a second. But I wonder if your willingness issue is secondary to the fact that you are unaware that you're burned out, that you're unable to cope with that burnout. So I don't want to think that you're unwilling and label you as just being stubborn, someone who used to be a really good employee, but now your heart's just not in the game. I don't want to make the problem you. And that's what that leader might very well, if I'm just treating the willingness as a superficial kind of an issue, as the real root cause of the problem, I'm going to completely miss the mark in being able to help us, help that person and save that person. Because obviously, what's their next step? If they're burned out, what do you think the next step in their career path is?
Tanking the company.
Find
Yep.
some way to move on and hopefully find a more what do I say, receptive, aware. What is it? A culture where people do pay attention, where mental health is somehow or another acknowledged. No, I don't know, but I'm just saying that to me sounds like there's a very strong possibility that it is a secondary willingness issue. And I need to deal with the real root cause issue, and then maybe the willingness will come back.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with that, because to Anja's point, like the World Health has now sanctioned burnout with the ICD codes. You can go to physicians to be treated for it. They call it literally an occupational phenomenon that's characteristic by compassion fatigue,
Yep.
emotional disconnect, and they had this whole litany of a list of some of the root causes. But by the time you reach that point, it's like the unawareness, that's too late, right? So the burnout is the outcome.
Well, right. So what am I either my choice is to either apologize and send them on their way. Um, I could ignore them altogether, make them take a vacation. I mean, some way or another, I got to ask myself, am I going to make the investment necessary to help this person become the person that I have seen them to be in the past and I know would like to continue to be? Because very often, by the way, when you're talking to someone who's burned out, their language to management is not, I won't do this. I won't do it. I won't do it. What do they say instead?
I can't.
I can't do it. I just can't do it. And they may not have really thought about exactly what's at the heart of that can't, but
Exactly.
something it implies. When you say I can't do something, you're saying that there is some obstacle that's in your way, which makes us go right back to the path. And
Right,
so,
it kind of depends on who you're saying it to,
right.
the toolkit that they're holding and what they're gonna interpret that as being.
Yeah.
They could be burned out too. I mean, with what's going on in the changes in business now.
Exactly. And we're getting bombarded. All kinds of things are doing that. And awareness as a mandate is becoming, what do I say, more and more saturated, I guess. I mean, how much enhanced awareness can a human being handle in a given day? Before you just go like, okay, I can't listen to another story. I can't read another report. I can't listen to another employee complain. I can't, I just can't, people. I can't.
Right.
Something is stopping me. That's what the can't is all about. Yeah. All right. So, before finishing the two, this feels like a good spot for me to remind you all that this program is the Oracle of the Self. This is happening within your own head. You don't have a manager or a trainer or a leader outside of you. If we're really talking about the Oracle of the Self, we're talking about what you can do for yourself. So this is really what it's all about. Well, if you're feeling burned out, you may very well be unwilling to do something. And so let me give you a very simple example of this. At this time of the year, if you're going to keep your garden looking decently, you pretty much have to water every day. By this time in July, for at least the past 4 or 5 years, we have already had our first monsoon rain. There might be monsoon activity south of Phoenix, but there is no monsoon activity out here in the West Valley. So things are particularly stressed. They're waiting for that summer rain that is such a requirement for so many of the things that live in the desert. If it's not for the summer rain, saguaro cactus would not exist anywhere. So we need those summer rains. They haven't come yet. And so I've been out there assuming I'd be watering every other day or every third day. Lo and behold, I'm watering every day, or things are just parched and drooped down. A couple of days ago, I went like, I can't do it. I can't go out there and spend an hour walking around with a hose or running the system or pulling out the moisture meter. I just can't do it. And so I didn't do it. Well, guess what everything looked like the next morning?
Sad.
Super bad. And so the amount of time it took me to kind of make sure everything is now refreshed and sheltered and all that. So I was definitely experiencing an issue of unwillingness.
And all those apologies you had to make.
Well, to each and every plant.
Mm-hmm.
Really, this is why you need to count how many you're willing to apologize to. So, I'm fully aware of what's going on. I mean, I'm able to do everything that needs to be done. I was just plain tired. And I don't mind sharing with you guys that I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I get up at 8. I do not get up before 8 a.m. when Linda's in town because I'm a night owl. I stay up late writing. And so, here I've been dragging myself out of bed at 5 a.m. to get out there and do what needs to be done. And then I can't make it the whole day. I end up needing a nap. And a nap in recent days has been 3 hours of napping.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's an issue going on. Is that what burnout is? Is that what we're kind of hearing? Is that whatever? So I just wanted to give you an example that say, forget applying this to businesses and families and everything else. You got to apply this to yourself to really see how this all plays out.
That's what I was thinking about for myself, because there is a phenomenon called highly sensitive people. In neuroscience, we will call this sensory processing sensitivity.
Oh,
And so as a preemie baby, noise, all those kinds of things used to bother me, but it still does. And so the way that I divide my day, like I don't watch news because I'm sensitive to taking on different environments. And I've seen this when we
Picking up
lived
the
in different
energy.
countries. I can pick up energies. This is why I get frustrated when families calling me about, their physical issues, but then they don't listen. Because then it becomes like this burden on me. And so I, try to cap all that stuff off, because
Right.
I have to have like double down on recovery, all these different kinds of things. It's a
Yep.
whole phenomenon. So there's
Right.
lots
And
of things
so
I just won't do.
let's look at that phenomenon, how it would plot on the change grid. So basically what Brian has just said is that he likes to live inside the green circle, right?
as,
That's
as
where you'd
much as
like to stay, as
possible.
close to the middle as possible, but inside the green circle, you could live a very nice, comfy kind of life and do whatever it needs to be done. But there are people in situations who keep pulling him outside of that green circle, move him between the green and the red. This is where something has to happen. Change has to occur around these sorts of things, or change needs to be questioned if we're in grid or out grid, or down grid rather. But if we're up grid and out grid, these things need to be addressed. These things need to be addressed. Where the things that are downgraded in grid, we could benefit from addressing them, but they in and of themselves are not demanding that immediate attention. Remember, people pay attention where they find their tension. That's upgrid. They also pay attention to where the tests are happening, where they are being stretched, where they are electing to go about doing whatever it is that needs to be done. So change occurs, outgrid and upgrid, but there's good opportunity to assess things in grid and down grid. That was more than I wanted to tell you, but nevertheless, he likes to be inside the green circle. People move him out between the green and the red. Can he do that? Yes. Is he good at doing that? Yes. But if he has to do too much of it, he's going to feel a real loss of this inside the green circle kind of
There's a
energy.
cost in that.
There's a
Big
huge
cost,
cost.
huge
Wow.
cost. Even
Lots
like
more energy going
speaking,
out, lots more.
like when I'm speaking to these groups here and they don't understand, like English, number one, is like a full contact sport for me because it is my third language. But like when
Oh
I'm
my God.
done, I'm done. Like I don't want to sit and talk about, oh yeah, great talk and the questions. I want to retreat. I'm done.
Yep. Yep. And so you're probably test as an I in the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, I'm INFJ.
INFJ, I'm INTP. We'll do that someday for those who haven't done your Myers-Briggs. We'll do that as well. Okay, but see, that's what we're really saying. There's a price to be paid. I like the way Anja put that, a price to be paid if we have to go out here between the green and the red circle. Well, there's so many people all around us that are pulling us away from that. My way of describing this, they are harshing our mellow. So, they're pulling us away from this really kind of pleasant little life where enjoying stuff's getting done, it's all fine, la, 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 here we are, this middle there, but they keep pulling us out here, whatever it is. You check your emails or something's going to move you outside of the green circle, check the mailbox, listen to your friend. Who are all these people? What are all these things that are trying to move you out? Well, the first order of business, as far as how you would take care of that, is all these things that are impacting you in a way you don't like being impacted. You have to decide whether or not you need to continue that relationship. And if you don't, get rid of it. One of the best ways to do tension management is to get things that cause you tension off of your grid altogether. So don't let it in your world. Now, you can't do that with everything, can you?
No.
But can you at least minimize some things?
Right. In fact, I was just reading I went to reread the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, because you had a chapter in there about being out too much or in too much. And in this chapter, this is the researchers has done this research on highly sensitive people over like 20, 30 years. But in the chapters, it says you don't need to run away from it per se, as it is you need to find a new way of living with stressors. And that's why I create mental models so that I can have recovery for when I do get stretched.
Sure.
But she talks about the dangers of being in too much, because then you become like this overprotective.
Well,
and
right.
So,
and so you're out here in the outgrid area, maybe even in the danger zone, and then you've got a giant price to pay. If you become so, what do I say? You start being protective, but at a certain point it becomes controlling, because the easiest way to protect somebody is to control what they're allowed to do or not do. If you're in between the green and the red, this may be one of your several sisters calling you up and saying, I need to vent about something. Well, you're trying to be fully engaged so that you can help them do whatever it is that needs to be done. There is a real price tag.
I have two questions.
Kinds of things. Yeah, go ahead, Anja.
Brian, I have two questions for you. Are you unwilling to tell these people to leave you alone?
Oh, no, not at all. I'll tell you quick.
Good.
I'll find you a shortcut.
Yeah,
But
that
that's the
doesn't
way I
stop
am.
them. That doesn't stop them, does it, Brian?
Not at all.
Oh.
Not at all, because there's an expectation for that. And I remember reading in the book, she says this: you may push yourself out too much, overstimulate yourself with too much work, risk taking or exploring, or you may keep yourself in too much, overprotecting yourself when you really long to be out in the world like others. So it's that imbalance.
Right, let me address that real quick. If what they're saying is that sometimes you become so consumed by monitoring yourself or dealing with yourself that you end up shying away or shunning things that might make you uncomfortable. That's describing someone who's moved too far in grid. They're trying to simplify their life, reduce the challenge so they don't have to have such a high level of ability. So they'd be living between in-grid and down-grid. Obviously, if challenge is low, you don't necessarily have a low level of ability. You may very well have, more often than not, a very high level of ability, but this is not much of an activity if it's this far down-grid. This is routine activities of daily living. So that's definitely an issue, but that's more on the in-grid side of thing, trying to, instead of actively change, we would say perhaps you need to stop and re-examine this situation so that you can do that. But you're out grid, you're not in grid.
Yeah, definitely.
You move into fix it mode, because for you it's easier. And I'm putting words in your mouth because there's a time constraint. But you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. But you feel that one of the easiest ways to help someone is to just rescue them from what's going on. Do it. And as you've noticed that people see you have that tendency, you work very hard to not be that resource.
Exactly.
Because that's where what you brought up last time around, where you
Yeah.
seem to be, Brian will do it. Brian will do everything.
Yeah. And I think it seemed to me to be a waste of time to keep repeating myself, especially with grown folks. And so I'm like, look, let's get this thing done now and be over with it. Let's not keep repeating it because then it becomes overwhelming for me.
Well,
Then I
right.
get triggered.
Right. And, we also need to stop rescuing people who aren't in distress just because it appears to be easier.
Yeah.
So whatever hell they're going through, nature is put in their life for a reason. It's not your place to take their hell away from them. So,
But
Yeah.
it's hard
they need
sometimes
to learn to
say
deal with
that.
stuff on their own. Yes, go ahead, Anja.
It's really hard sometimes. These are people that you care about, people that you love, and it's hard to say, okay, that's your baggage. Pick it up and go. I can't carry it for you anymore.
It is hard. And that's why you have to kind of think about, where do they have me on the grid? And now let me really think about this. Can I just get them off of my grid altogether? Or are they someone that I need to keep around for whatever reasons I want to keep them around? In which case, the question becomes not how do I change them, but how do I change me in order to make them more tolerable or more workable? Now, without getting specific, I've certainly had friends over the years that were very demanding, were very energetically different than myself. And for a while, I kind of knew, well, I don't think this is likely to change. And so I decided to try to change myself. That did not prove to be successful. Don't think just because you have the awareness of the oracle and the self and all that sort of stuff that you're going to be 100% successful. You're not. There's going to be things that are your own personal learnings, and some lessons are harder learned than others. So ultimately, I thought, all of my subtle ways of dealing with this particular person have failed. So, and I've tried to make their behavior not bother me, and I have failed. And so I'm going to just confront it once and for all and see if they stay on my grid as someone who is learning, is willing, is aware, going back to those root causes. Why are they the way they are? Is it because they're unaware of something, unable to do something, unwilling to do it, or are they unsuitable altogether? I got to be able to do this part of the work if I'm going to be helping somebody else. But is that where I was? Yeah. So I have to really be someone who says, I have to be willing sometimes to try a new tactic. Maybe I need to have a come to Jesus meeting with them, and they can either see me as someone who cares about them, but won't tolerate their behavior any longer, or am I someone who they're not going to follow, in which case the situation is never going to change. That was a lot of backstory, but does it resonate in any way with any of you?
Oh my God,
Yes.
to my core.
Yes. Exactly.
Right. And so one of the things that I've learned is by letting go of these people. I know I'm squiggling here around the change grid just because this specific person, that's where they lived. So I know that it seems like you're losing something. I promise you, you're not losing anything. You're not really losing anything that was worth the cost of having it.
Yep.
But damn
That's-
it, it's hard to, yeah.
It's very difficult, but the
Oh my
difficulty is
God.
not about them, because they've probably been consistent in their behavior set.
Absolutely.
The challenge has been one that's fallen onto your shoulders because you are coming from a heart place. That's why I'm over here. You're more on the amiable side of the driver world here. You're trying to have some positive impact on whatever's going on. You're trying to be supportive. You're trying to be energizing or whatever. But they need, I don't know if they need to calm down or gear up, but whatever it is, they aren't really responding. At a certain point in time, you need to take inventory and ask yourself, am I getting more from this relationship than what this relationship is costing me? And if the answer isn't absolutely, then you need to think about how to get out of it. That there are subtle, quiet ways which might have been better given the outcome. You just fizzle out, just disappear, make yourself unavailable, ghost them, I guess is our new terminology. Or are you going to have a candid heart-to-heart conversation with them that may very much involve sharing with them your perspective, how you experience them, and why you can no longer find experiencing them of justifiable
Hey,
benefit.
T,
Yep.
T,
Yep.
often those kinds of conversations just prolong the agony.
I agree.
But you,
And so,
just,
you know,
Yeah, you can.
I know,
You can just walk away.
I can't though.
Yep, you
yeah,
can.
all right. Okay, let's have a little coaching here then. This is what these calls were actually designed for. Yay! It only took 25 hours to get there. So, all right, so on to, when you use the word I can't, what you're actually doing from a linguistic perspective, and this is one of the more advanced kind of techniques we would teach, but nevertheless, it's come up, so here it is. The word I can't is considered to be a linguistic violation. Humans communicate with one another, at least in English, committing frequent linguistic violations from a set of 13 different possibilities. One of them is a modal operator of possibility. I can't do that. I can't do that. So this modal operator of possibility implies that something is stopping you from being able to do it. You can't do it because there's something there. So we have to listen to this modal operator. What is behind the word can't? So behind the word can't, there is a belief that something undesirable will happen if you do. And so our question, if we were in a coaching relationship, I would say, what would happen or what's stopping you from doing that? What's stopping you from there's also a modal operator of necessity. Yes. Which is more about a resource happening. So we'll talk about that when the time comes for it. Now, I can't do something implies that there is an obstacle in your way. So what is stopping you from doing it?
I don't feel like I've done every possible thing that I can.
All right, then. So that means that you are still willing to invest in whatever this relationship with this person happens to be. I would still encourage you to take a critical inventory of what you get and what you give in that particular relationship. And as long as it's still, you're getting more than it's costing you, all right, then you're getting more than it's costing you. So pay the price. But once you hit that moment where you say like, no, I am not getting more than I'm giving, then we as your coaches would want to, first of all, help you reach a decision about whether or not you are ready to do something. And once you say you are ready to do that, then we need to support you in staying true to whatever that decision happens to be. So, so yeah, but your words, I'm not ready. I don't think I've done everything I can do yet. All right, is that where you're at on the situation?
Exactly.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts about what you could be doing that you haven't tried yet?
Yeah.
My goodness.
That's a good question.
Well,
That's an excellent question.
well, I bring up the question because at a certain point in time, the root cause is no longer going to be about a willingness issue, because right now you're sounding like you're unwilling to sever that relationship, although you are able, and you may very well be aware of plenty of stuff that's going on. But we have to figure out what is missing, what else could you be doing? What if the truth is there's nothing else you could do? You've already done everything that's possible in the setting. So maybe we need to reawaken an awareness of whatever the limitations are. That's why I go back to this idea about taking an inventory, but we'd add to your inventory, what are all the things that you have tried and what were the outcomes of those attempts? And what are the things you haven't tried yet? And what do you predict the outcome would be? If you, at the end of that, you say, no, I've tried everything there is to try, then we would need to explore with you how those two beliefs can occupy the same space at the same time. One belief is that I can't let go because I haven't tried everything yet. And the other thought being, but I've tried everything. You with me on this? So we either need to figure out what's that missing approach might be, or it might be more about becoming comfortable.
Yeah, I think
Anya,
Yeah.
is this a family member?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, because there is a family member in mind that I have done it and gone to that point with. This is a very close friend that I don't want to have the same ending that I had with the family member. And what T said about just saying, look, this is where you're driving me crazy. This I can't deal with.
Yep.
We can't go here.
Yeah, you're allowed to have boundaries.
Conversation I need to have.
Yeah, you're allowed to have boundaries. Likewise, they're allowed to have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
They might say, well, if you're not willing to do X, which is something you've said that is out of bounds, then they might say that's a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
But at
And that's
least you're
fine.
having
That
an
would put an end to it.
yeah, at least you're having an open, candid discussion coming from a place of care that allows you to move on. But that's different than coming up with another thing you can try to fix it.
Oh.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That's a different
think-
discussion. This is
Oh.
what we've just said about having that heart-to-heart discussion is what you would do either as an attempt to renegotiate the boundaries around the relationship or to say farewell in as loving a way as possible. You know, but it sounds to me like something needs to be redefined more than it needs to be discarded. But if they're unwilling to redefine, which was my situation, then I'm sorry, but our you know, our little Venn diagram, we have no intersection. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
we're
T,
separate bubbles.
T,
Yes.
when you ask the question, I'm gonna call it the question, and the response was silence, and then I don't know. So it seems that we hold on to a belief that
Oh, yeah.
you come up with something.
Right, because it's a lot easier for you to take the
rather-
blame. Yeah, it's much easier for you to take the blame for the situation as it is, rather than recognize there is no blame to assign anywhere.
Right,
Mhm.
but the
know.
holding on to the beliefs should be regularly examined.
Well, absolutely. And by the way, again, if we can go back to the whole point of this program, the Oracle of the Self, that belief does not exist inside of this green circle.
Exactly. It's constructed.
That
That's
belief is either up in
interesting. Yeah,
stress, that there is a fear that some negative outcome will come along and you'll have to deal with the loss that you associate with the other time, you know, something had to happen. Or I mean, I know you. I think that's more the situation as opposed to that you're too far out grid and you just can't keep slapping them into shape. You know, you know,
My
this
hand
isn't
hurt.
you, but you know. Yeah, you're more up here somewhere. So yeah.
I think the inventory certainly was helpful.
Yes, go ahead.
for me.
Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Where on the grid are the people who can cut you out with not a word?
Mm.
Oh, well, they're either very far out grid, very far down grid, or very far mid grid. So I know that's a bunch of possibilities.
that's not an
I'll say
answer.
The question is, did they verbalize something before cutting you out forever?
No.
Okay, if they didn't, then they're not out grid.
Mm-mm.
Because the outgrid person is going to fight. They're going to put forth their case and give you the what for. The person who simply lets go is going to either be more in grid or down grid. And the question here becomes, are you consciously avoiding the person? If you're consciously avoiding the person, then they're still in your world, right? You're just trying to contain it. Where if you kind of go like, oh no, I never even think about him anymore. Well, guess where you are on the grid? So you're down grid. So it really has to do with the conversation that led to that particular outcome. I can tell you that I don't know if this is unusual. I always thought it was normal, but someone pointed out that they'd never met anyone else like me. I have 0 friends from high school remaining. I have 1 friend from college who I haven't spoken to in at least a decade.
You've got me beat. I have no friends from high school and no friends from college.
There you are. Even I
I'm
spent the first 50 years of life in Michigan, and the friends I have from Michigan counted today would be Tom, Anja, and Diane. Other than that, I mean, there's plenty of people, if I was in Michigan, I could see we'd have a perfectly lovely time, but I don't consider them to be, friends of any longevity with me. And so I find it very easy to let go of relationships. It might be because I am an INTP. I am, like I'm all those things that I am. I really am a person who exists in my own inner world. And so I don't seek a whole lot of external alignments and things like that. So it's kind of fine. David dropped off the call because he had a 1:30, but among all of the people that are affiliated with ChangeWorks, we've known David the longest. I guess I would count him as a friend, but I put him in the category of being a professional, colleague, but he's also in Michigan.
Yeah.
Where is he in Michigan?
He in Pontiac, greater area. Grand Blanc, I think, is actually his mailing address. And then I know we also have David Chinsky, who has a home in Michigan, but I know him because of living in Scottsdale for half the year. So anyway, my point is to Susan's thought, some people find it much easier to let go and let go quickly, definitively let go. And for me, that's an act of self-preservation. So I'm just in this little bubble, and that's fine. So am I sad when they go? I still have 3 friends from North Carolina. 3 friends. Yeah, I lived there for 16 years. I have 3 friends from North Carolina that I would keep in touch with.
So yeah, so it's easy for me to do the same thing, because I moved around so much too. So it's quite easy to do that. It becomes, when it comes to family, then the culture starts coming where mom would say, well, this is not our culture kind of thing. And I have to tell mom, look, I have to have boundaries because of my own protection. And so, I put the boundaries up and I have no problems with it whatsoever. I can care less who gets mad or who gets whatever. I have no problem with it. When it comes to my sense of peace, none.
I cut ties with family 44 years ago.
Exactly.
So I think this is the whole thing. Some people go like, oh, that's so sad. No, not really.
I mean, why keep talking about the same thing? I tell my family, we're all 50 and over. We don't have another 50 years to keep playing games with this stuff, right?
There you go.
Life.
See, now that's the oracle of the self-talking. When you decide to accept the truth that you are in the world alone, you came into the world alone, you're going to leave the world alone. All these relationships we have, no matter how beautiful and long-term they may happen to be, we're still an individual. And we might align ourselves with other individuals for whatever reasons we have. But ultimately, you're responsible for your own mind, your own mental health, your own life, whatever it is. If it's great, then great. But if it's not, whose shoulders does it sit on to do something about it? So if you're feeling pulled outside of the green circle because something's upsetting you, or you got to go and confront something, or there's all this minutia that's just piled up downgrade, okay, this stuff is what's robbing you of that peaceful existence inside the green circle. So you get to decide if you're going to deal with this stuff, and then you got to go deal with it. So that this is what the oracle is really all about. You talking to you about you, and then taking proper action. So Yeah.
So T, you've been 44 years clean and sober.
44 years clean and sober. No, it's
Yeah.
true. When
Yeah.
I left for college, I never returned. So, but that, if I'm telling you, if I wrote a book and it got turned into a movie, I'm telling you, it could be Oscar performances. So, yeah.
Who would play you?
Oh no, I would just be a voice.
Ah,
I would there might be no, I would just be the voice because
Oh, you couldn't just be a voice. You
oh
had
yeah. I think I would. I think I would because the drama is its own thing. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I didn't reach
Are you Oz?
pardon me. No. No, what I
Pay
am
no
was
attention to the man behind the curtain.
yeah, well, at one point I was identified as the invisible child. So
Mm-hmm.
I received very little notice because it didn't stir up any trouble. And so I got ignored, but I wasn't getting ignored. I wasn't getting ignored. They were too far upgrade on so many other issues that a downgrade issue like me didn't require any attention, so it didn't get any attention. So I became very self-reliant, but that's okay because personality-wise, I popped into the world as a more self-reliant kind
That's
of.
interesting because I was the exact opposite. Because think about it, as a preemie baby, you're always coddled, right? And so
Oh
always
yeah.
breaking bones. And I was the athlete of the family, so everything would be like, is Brian in a hospital again? And so I got some point, I just got tired of all this attention, and it just became like a burden for
And
and I've
so
always hated it, and I have 6 sisters, 3 brothers. So it's kind of like, my sister, even as an adult, was still like try to smother me, and I fight
well,
back.
right now, let's think about that then. That's the difference between what your nature is. Your nature is to be independent, left
Exactly.
alone. But the
Exactly.
environment that you are in, which it does include culture, and all the family dynamics that are going on, those were imposed upon you because that's what happens when you're an infant. I mean, look,
Yeah.
all you can do is cry and pee and poop. So what are you
Right.
supposed to do? And so they decided
And
to coddle
smile.
and smile, right. But they were coddling him, and there was something in your energy, your essence, that just said, "Just take your hands off of me."
Yeah, like let
I'll
me
be
learn
just
how to
fine.
fall. Yeah,
Right. Leave me
I can.
alone. But see, culturally, you can't just walk away from all that. And, that's also true, by the way, for a lot of other that are on the call or listening to the call. I know enough about your backstories to kind of know that there are other things driving your maintaining certain relationships that no longer serve you or match you. But the cost of getting rid of those relationships is far greater than the cost of dealing with it. By dealing with it, I mean of not dealing with it to fix it, but coping with it or just settling for it or, continuing to be in that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, as long as you can move yourself inside of the green circle whenever you need, I will promise you, if you get good at this, you will be able to see all these things that are happening between your green and red circles, all these life situations, and you will be able to deal with them from a detached place. You'll look at them and say, aren't those interesting? Aren't those amusing? Aren't those odd? Aren't those whatever? And when you say any of those things, you're moving yourself out of your limbic system and into your cortex. So the moment you have a phrase, that's the Bufflin maneuver. Anytime you are feeling out of sorts, stop for just an instant and ask yourself, or just say to yourself, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Why
That
am I
has worked for me.
What's that?
That has worked for me more than 10 times.
It will always work because what you've just done is you have forced your brain to leave the limbic system and move into your cortex because you're asking it a question that requires a logical response. The only part of your brain that can do that is your cortex.
Yep.
So once you're up in your cortex, well, then things become that much easier. So if you need something to summon you to the center of the change grid, when we start talking about PowerPoint maneuvers, one of the things you can always do is that Buffalo maneuver. Isn't that interesting? And by the way, you can be more creative that you can say, why am I thinking that? How is that feeling serving me? These are still all questions that require a logical response. And if you find yourself getting pulled back up into the emotional response, just stop again and say, isn't that interesting why I'm continuing to have an emotional response about this? So it is better to feel nothing than to feel something that is moving you outside of the best you that you can be.
Don't get drawn into that.
Right. So each one of those uns have its own energy consequence.
Well, one of the things we'll talk about next time around, since we've actually made it through 3 out of the 4 root causes, is where do those root causes live on the change grid? So if you want to say, where am I likely to find people who are unaware? Where am I likely to find people who are unwilling? Where am I likely to find people who are unsuitable? So where do those things live?
World.
And then how do I go about moving them around, assuming I choose to move them? Keep in mind that having the ability to be an expert tension manager does not obligate you to do so. You got that? You're in the world. You're in your own green circle. There's not another person inside of your green circle with you. You are inside your own green circle. You decide, do I want to interact with whatever that issue is? Do I want to invest in whatever those relationships or those demands may be? You know, you move outside of the green circle voluntarily. So if you're finding yourself pulled out there and it wasn't voluntary, then you need to fix that. And you can do that very quickly by the Buffalo maneuver. Just ask yourself, isn't that interesting? Why am I allowing this situation to have that impact on my emotions? Why would I do that? How does that serve me? Keep in mind, as Brian has said on many, many occasions, the only reason why you're doing something is because your brain thinks that by doing that, whatever the something happens to be, you'll be better off. The brain doesn't participate in you doing things that are in the moment believed to be good for you. I said that because there's all kinds of people that drink and drink alcohol and smoke stuff and take drugs and do all kinds of things that are dysfunctional, addictive sort of things. Keep in mind that their brain is allowing that to happen. So, because if the moment the brain says enough of letting you have conscious involvement in your life, I'm going to pull you in. I'll do that because ultimately the brain's primary job is to make sure that you survive another day.
Exactly. That's why I believe in the audit, like a daily audit even, because the brain is built for that status quo. So everything's based on past.
Yep. You got to do a self-assessment. And the thing is that how can you assess things that you are not aware of? And so this whole thing is about this whole point of identifying root causes is the real skill, identifying the root cause. It's easy to deal with them, but you've got to be able to identify that root cause. And awareness is the most difficult one to identify.
You know, I actually designed an audit. I based it off of what you call the value farming. Remember that?
Yep.
And I created a IRA. That's part of my journaling process. And IRA is individual responsibility account. And so look for, what deposits did I make in my IRA daily? What withdrawals and what was the cost of those withdrawals? So is it dividend value, commodity value? So it's a nice way for me to gamify this audit process. So it's not just mechanistic kind of a thing.
And I think too, when it comes to relationships, you can use the IRA in a little different sort of a way. I don't know how you'd modify the question, but if we're talking about relationships, we have to ask ourselves that same question, but in a slightly different way. So Brian, you said it's more about being able to decide what actions are going to serve you and what you're getting from those actions. Is that how you characterize it?
It's more of a value-genic process of looking at what value or even potential value is able to be created.
Right. What does what value is this is this bringing to you? So we have to apply that same thing when we're talking about relationships. Is that relationship bringing you the value that you are really looking for? And again, it goes back to this whole awareness kind of an issue. So yeah. All right. So obviously you guys are finding this interesting. So shall we pick up where we left off next time? We'll talk about suitability issues. We will look at where they land on the change grid, and we will then get into the change grid maneuvers, upgrade, downgrade, outgrid, ingrid, and PowerPoint, so that we can really manage someone's level of tension. Just leave being reminded that the better you get at tension management, the more you're going to feel compelled to use these techniques on others. The Oracle of the Self is all about using these techniques on yourself. And so do that first. And once you get really good at that, then it is safe for you to move out between the green and the red circle and do so with confidence that you can manage whatever needs to be managed.
Hey T,
Yeah.
Have you ever read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations?
I have, in fact, but it has been many, many moons.
Yeah, I have.
Share what brought that up for
you? He was a Roman emperor 1900 years ago. He every night he would audit his day, and he would write every night in his diary and whatever method, and all of those pieces of writing are still available. They exist. And it was never meant to be published. It was his own private writings. He referred to himself in the third person. When he was angry with himself, he called himself you. Other than that, it was he or him.
Interesting.
He would analyze his day, and in the morning, he would get up and do something like pardon 100 criminals whose crime against the Roman Empire had simply been to question things.
Very good.
Get up one morning and cancel 100 executions. But one thing, and then I'll let you guys go. One thing he said that I remember was, he said, "Why do you rail in anger against the world as if the world would ever change for you?"
It's so true. Yeah. Wow, that's absolutely true.
At any rate, this reminds me of the auditing process and going back to the center.
Absolutely. One other thing I'll add as far as the auditing thing, when it comes to relationships, you can imagine that when we do the kind of coaching work that we do, more often than not, the subjects are going to sooner or later get around to relationships that are working or not working or whatever. And one of the things I say is that the assessment you want to perform there is whether or not you're receiving your spiritual food from that relationship. So you have to think about, what is it that people really want out of a relationship? And a good relationship might bring you certain things from a practical perspective. That's fine. But very often the relationship feeds you somehow or another. It supports you and energizes you and nurtures you and teaches you and all these things that help you become a better version of you. And so I got this idea about spiritual food from a friend of mine who is actually a very devout atheist, but nevertheless, they tithe. They spend 10% of all of the money that they make by giving it to people who fed them spiritually. And so if they are at a restaurant and the waitress says something that just kind of touches them in a way or gives them a cause for pause, a thought, that's going to be reflected in the tip. They're going to sooner or later every week give away 10% of all the money that they made, because they do recognize that we are spiritual beings. We're people of energy, but they just don't believe in the whole, religion and everything that comes along with that. But that idea about paying for your spiritual food, what are you learning? Where are you learning it from? And how do you, acknowledge that? And so that was his kind of thing. You pay to where you're getting your spiritual food. All right, anywho, so next time around, we'll pick up where we left off and finish out this section of the grid. Final thoughts, comments?
No,
This has been amazing.
Yeah,
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. All right. And again, anytime you guys want to talk about some of these issues more privately, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay. Bye for now, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.